Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, in the news today, Katan, we have the Catholic Church sexual abuse cover-up now making its way all the way to the Vatican. So we'll have those details. Also, Russia is claiming that the White Helmets, supposedly the aid group over there in Syria, is getting ready to stage a chemical attack to draw the U.S. further into Syria, another provocation of war. Right. So we'll have those details. And also we're going to talk a little bit about the military, their testing procedures, and what takes place when someone is sexually assaulted in the military and would like to be discharged. So those stories and more, but first we're going to show you a video, pretty unpleasant, of what the Venezuelans are experiencing right now. They're buying spoiled meat. So let's take a look at this clip and see why.
Bueno, todo eso no sirve, amor. Pero, ajá, ¿qué se vamos a hacer? Usted está a la deriva de Dios.
¿A qué huele esa carne?
No, huele así un poco licoso, pero ajá, se lava ahora y con un poquito de vinagre, limón.
Boy, it's sad that those people have to go through that. Of course, Venezuela has been being hit very hard lately with their economy and, of course, not having the supplies they need for food as well as medical things in the hospitals. Well, Chuck Shaw is the Education Service Specialist at the Boston MEPS, which stands for Military Entrance Processing Station. His goal is to market the Armed Services Aptitude Vocational Battery, or as it's called, ASVAB or ASVAB, to 419 schools in that area of the country. The ASVAB is a timed test like other standardized tests. However, it measures the student's potential to learn rather than what they have learned up to the present. Let's take a look at what this testing is all about.
What they're looking for is to match individuals in the service with the right kind of occupations that's going to make them more efficient and provide the best person for the service. And we're doing much the same thing with the career exploration.
When I was looking at a list of jobs that are available with the scores that I got on my ASVABs, that would seem like a good job to go along with what I've learned.
It is. It's a very interesting job. Okay, Mr. Wood, could I have you read down each one of these statements? Print your name, yes or no, by each statement.
The ultimate goal of the ASVAB is to get an AFQT score for that applicant. Each individual service will take that score, and they have criteria which an applicant has to meet to qualify for a specific job.
When you're done with that, you're going to click next, and the test will begin. You have scratch paper, you have a piece of pen, you have a pencil. If you need any help or any more paper at all, you want to hit that red help button and then raise your hand. Okay?
When we take the program out into schools, it isn't just to try and get everybody to enlist in the service. That we're providing a product and services that go well beyond that. When we talk to the counselors and the administrators, a lot of them don't realize that the program is free. When we talk to the counselors and the administrators, a lot of them don't realize that the program is free.
The test administrators that work here at the Boston MEPS are instructed to almost put the applicant at ease, to try to get them to relax, to do the best that they can do on the particular test.
Well, it kind of shows you a little bit about why they do their testing, to see where they can place a person in the military. Now, at the MEPS, they help students understand what work values are and find out what's important to them. In essence, what they are looking for is to get from a particular career choice. Now, using that information combined with the ASVAB, they help students plan their career, including how long it will take to achieve, as well as the cost of their education. Now, Mr. Shaw believes their program is, quote, stands head and shoulders above the rest.
Interesting. Human Rights Watch recently interviewed some ex-service members who were discharged because they were sexually assaulted. Well, their stories are true and all too common in the military today. But once they get out of the armed services, well, they're not treated as normal veterans with the standard benefits, and there are also lifelong effects from what they go through while they're in the military.
Well, take Liz Luras, for example. She was 18 when she joined the Marines and went into military intelligence. Now, she was raped at a Marine Corps ball, and after reporting the rape, she said, "My entire career in the military went from excelling and on an extremely promising path to ultimately being discharged with a personality disorder."
Wow. However, Liz is not alone. There are literally thousands of service members who have been wrongfully discharged after they reported they were sexually assaulted, and nothing has been done to help them.
Well, Ms. Luras believes if she had not reported the rape, there would have been no investigation, and she would not, therefore, have been discharged. She would have continued on her career path with the Marines.
Human Rights Watch spoke to over 160 sexual harassment survivors, many of whom received bad discharges and are still feeling the impact of those discharges many years later.
Now, Heath Phillips was in the U.S. Navy and experienced several assaults by a homosexual while out to sea. When he found out the ship was getting ready to leave again, he went AWOL. Now, he recounted his story to Human Rights Watch, saying, I was not going to go out to sea with these men and deal with this every single day. As soon as the ship left, I turned myself in immediately.
Mr. Phillips said the ultimate end was my lawyer asked me, "Well, do you want to be in the military?" He said, I told him, yes, I still want to be in. He says, well, they won't transfer you. He goes, your other option is you're going to have to get out. I said, okay. What does this mean? Well, the lawyer said, you're going to get an other than honorable discharge, and I would be off the ship and I wouldn't be able or be near those attackers anymore.
Sounds like an okay idea, but as the story continues here, you're going to see it's going to hurt them in the end.
That's right.
Well, 85% of such discharges are honorable, so having a discharge other than honorable sends up warning flags in society today. Now, because of the labeling of other than honorable, Mr. Phillips has had a hard time finding work and cannot get the benefits he needs for his health care, even now, decades later. Now, Ms. Luras received an honorable discharge, however, having the words personality disorder right next to it has caused her countless hardships, including missed job opportunities. So, what can someone do?
Sarah Dereshori, a senior council member for Human Rights Watch, says thousands of victims were wrongfully discharged, but nothing has been done to correct their discharges. The Department of Defense's response has been to refer people who believe they were unjustly discharged to the boards of correction of military records or the discharge review boards. But in fact, the likelihood of success before those boards is next to nothing.
Now, lawyers who have tried to help their clients go before the review boards have not had much success. From not being allowed to present their case to being screamed at and interrogated, nothing is done to consider the welfare of the discharged service men and women who many have documented evidence of their sexual assaults while in service.
Mr. Phillips explained how it should have went. He said, if I would have been able to sit in front of that board and explain my actions, explain what happened to me so they can connect and understand why I went AWOL, why I missed ship movement, they would know that it was because I was scared for my life. They would know that it was because I was being sexually assaulted. They would know because I was doing things that no human should have to do.
So what this actually means, Katan, is each one of these service members who were sexually assaulted were actually discharged illegally because they were denied the due process that others being discharged under different circumstances would receive. Now, as a result, some turn to alcohol and drugs while others are committing suicide. But still, the military shows no true care or concern for these people that they were so glad to welcome into their circle in the beginning. And as we showed with our first article there on the testing, they want to get people in the military, but afterwards, not too concerned about taking care of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that we've reported in times past the great increase in the numbers of suicides within the military as compared to the general population, and how those numbers have gone up over the years kind of puts a new face on why depression is so rampant within the military, not because of the face of war, but what people have to face in dealing with their fellow servicemen and women.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one time, if you remember, it was as much as an hour they were killing themselves.
That's right. Horrible. Well, the Roman Catholic Church is in the headlines once again, and a recent story coming out of the state of Pennsylvania involving the church is one of sex abuse, cover-up, and scandal. Well, our field correspondent Larry McGee has been covering this story. Now, Larry, what exactly is taking place in the state of Pennsylvania with the Catholic Church?
Yet another scandal and backlash as the secretive practices of the Catholic Church have been forced out into the open by abuse victims once again. Just as was seen with Benedict, the Pope in the shadows, it is also now being reported concerning Francis, the Pope out front, that a cover-up concerning sex abuse has been occurring, extending all the way up to the papal office. Catholic whistleblower Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, in his 11-page expose, is likening his own organization to the mafia, alleging that it operates according to a conspiracy of silence. The Catholic official, who was once the Vatican's top man here in the U.S., says he alerted Pope Francis to sexual abuse concerning one cardinal as early as the year 2013, and the standing pontiff did nothing. The priest accused went on to serve in the Catholic Church for another 5 years uninterrupted before having to step down this summer due to scandal. Pope Francis has so far refused any explanation with regard to the matter, and caution is surely understandable concerning an issue that other high-level officials in the Vatican are calling an earthquake for the Church. The Pope could find himself coming face-to-face with his own zero-tolerance policy for cover-ups, as 2 of his bishops here stateside are now calling for a wider investigation. The system that not too long ago used Sandusky as a scapegoat is being outed in a considerable way by the investigative efforts of Pennsylvania's Attorney General Josh Shapiro. The attorney stated in his fact-finding that he discovered that Catholic officials would lie to parishioners, lie to policemen, lie to the public, and then go document all of the abuse in secret archives that they would oftentimes share with the Vatican. From the latest wave of allegations, civil suits are now coming, brought by attorneys who are outraged and more than anxious, of course, to assist victims in receiving compensation. Returning back to, however, to the findings of Attorney General Shapiro, his offer discovered at least 301 Catholic priests suspected of abuse in his state alone, with over 1,000 children believed to have been molested. In one instance, 5 girls were abused in a single family by the same priest, with one of the children being as young as 18 months old. The spokesperson for the Catholic Conference in Pennsylvania offered the usual sympathies, while Mr. Shapiro hit the morning talk shows to discuss his results. One of the biggest questions was, why was there only 2 priests charged in his state when the grand jury there found evidence against more than 400? The AG says that that was due to weak laws in Pennsylvania, reflected in part by statutory limitations, but it was also due, he says, to the sophisticated cover-up by the Catholic Church. The attorney says that there was a deliberate effort to shield predator priests from the arm of the law. Of the 2 clerics who were charged, one is now reported to have been defrocked and is living as a registered child molester in the community, while the second is reported to still be awaiting trial. Meanwhile, a special clergy abuse hotline in the state has yielded an additional 733 claims, and Mr. Shapiro believes that the cover-up is still ongoing, citing the church's records as evidence of its dishonesty concerning the abuses. The conclusion seems to be that there is in Pennsylvania a structure in place deliberately contrived by the Catholic Church to conceal these sorts of crimes, so that now the question lingering in the minds of many individuals is, what about the nation's 49 other states? For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, it looks like the Vatican is going to have some serious explaining to do.
That's right.
Well, Syria and Russia warn of a false flag chemical attack in the Idlib province in order to provoke military action by the West. The Syrian foreign minister says that the U.S. and its allies are preparing to stage a gas attack and that Syria will defend itself against a U.S. aggression. Now, these statements were made at a press conference with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in Moscow. Now, Lavrov also warned the West against attacking Syria. Lavrov also accused the West of planning to launch a chemical attack in Idlib.
Yes, in April, the UK, US, and France unleashed a bombing campaign in Syria in response to an alleged gas attack in the city of Douma. They blamed the Syrian government for the air raid, but of course Damascus denied that claim.
The UN Special Envoy for Syria warned of a potential storm in Syria's Idlib as the army is preparing a major offensive to retake the province from the terrorists. Now, Stefan de Mistra, UN Special Envoy for Syria, said that this perfect storm is based on counter warnings and warnings which is gathering around and due to the dilemma on how to defeat the terrorists in Idlib and at the same time avoid affecting a huge number of civilians, which of course was a big problem in times past when so many civilians were killed in these attacks. He continued, no one doubts that al-Nusra and al-Qaeda are terrorists and that terrorists identified by the UN need to be defeated.
Well, Mr. Mishra added that there are about 10,000 al-Qaeda offshoots in Idlib, as well as talked about setting up ways to help civilians leave the province safely. The envoy also urged Iran, Russia, and Turkey to force stall a battle that could affect millions of civilians there in Idlib. Of course, that area, Idlib, is the major part of Syria, and it is still under control of foreign-backed arms groups. Well, the Syrian army and its allies want to purge it of those militants.
Alai Risk, a political analyst, said in an interview with Press TV that there are certain pressures on the U.S. for an airstrike on Syria, one being Israel, as well as certain hawkish figures within U.S. who he assumes those figures would be pushing for a U.S. intervention because the Syrian government and its allies are on the verge of achieving victory. Now, once the terrorists have been defeated in Idlib, the war would just about be ended.
Riz continued, that scenario would be considered disastrous for Israel, Saudi Arabia, and for the pro-regime change figures in Washington. And that gives credibility to the statements made by Lavrov about chemical weapons attacks, and of course it would fit into the pattern that we've seen all along the course of the war.
It's kind of amazing, though, that they would want to prolong the war. It sounds like they could be ending here, but you know they could do the chemical attack and keep it going. Well, the U.S. is ignoring warnings that terrorists are preparing a chemical attack in the northwest province of Syria, in the province of Idlib. Now, U.S. State Department spokesman said that they don't buy into the intel provided by Moscow, saying that information is a false flag warning of Moscow trying to put the blame on other groups, but we just don't buy into that. Now, Russia said that it has information on the delivery of toxic substances delivered to Idlib province, claimed to have gotten there with the help of the South Star Rescue Group, the White Helmets, and is to be used in a false flag attack.
Lavrov said that the purpose is to keep the weapons for a provocation, and of course there to keep al-Nusra there, counting on using it against the so-called regime, which is what they call it. Now, following the alleged Ghouta attacks, Russia warning that rebels will try to form a similar incident in Idlib to draw the U.S., France, and Britain to get them to hit Assad again. So hopefully taking these weapons that were provided, these chemical weapons, and using this as a provocation against the United States to draw them in to fighting. Because if you remember, John Bolton said if those weapons are used, well, we're gonna attack, we're gonna retaliate.
Right, and it's the same thing that took place last time with the chemical attacks. Then the U.S. went on the bombing campaign at that time, right after those chemical attacks were used, but no investigations were ever proven or shown, conducted rather, and shown that actually Syria was behind it. They just said, we know Syria did it, and therefore we're going in.
Even though Bashar al-Assad invited,
openly invited
nuclear energy, come and take a look for yourself. Bring all your testing equipments and all your organizations and let them test for themselves, and they'll see that we didn't have anything to do with it, but that offer wasn't taken up. And of course, Russia sees this, and that's why they say, a disaster is imminent here.
Right, but this time they called it ahead of time.
Yeah,
so,
they did.
So
we'll
it's kind of the
surprise
is taken away. Well, the Syrian government says that it is ready to capture the last major stronghold in the province of Idlib and has been deploying a defensive, but that it is willing to consider a course of reconciliation. Now, the key militant group controlling the area rejected that idea, though. The group's chief has warned any other group from taking part in any talks with Damascus.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that the U.S. National Security Advisor warned that if Syria used chemical weapons, the U.S. would respond very strongly, warning Syria to think about its actions for a very long time before making any decisions. Of course, that was said by John Bolton. Now, some consider this the final battle that would bring an end to 7 years of bloody combat in Syria that has ravaged the country and sent millions fleeing. Well, the Syrian government is deploying troops to the Idlib area who are prepared for hard battles with militants from the terrorist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham.
Well, on the waters, U.S. naval forces are said to have moved into the Mediterranean Sea, putting themselves in a position to make good on Bolton's threat. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense said that the USS Ross is loaded with Tomahawk cruise missiles, and the White Helmets, an al-Qaeda-led group who is somehow always present for a chemical attack, are said to be ready to film with their HD cameras given to them by U.S. aid.
Well, in 2015, other White Helmet members celebrated the takeover of Idlib by al-Nusra Front. The Russian MOD said that this attack would be used as a pretext by the U.S., UK, and France for strikes on Syria. This scenario is, of course, eerily similar to the bombing of Syria by the United States back in April, and we're seeing that same scenario build to that outcome right now.
But despite the lack of evidence of a chemical attack by Damascus, the U.S.'s Nikki Haley said that the U.S. is willing to do it again. She said at a Security Council meeting, saying, "I spoke to the president this morning, and he said if the Syrian regime uses this poisonous gas again, the United States is locked and loaded."
With the battle looming in Idlib, civilians are once again fleeing through humanitarian corridors set up by the Syrian government and Russia. The Syrian army is sending other reinforcements to Idlib, including tanks, artillery, and other military equipment. And officers say that their troops are ready for the final battle, and as of right now, they are just waiting for the order. So a lot are looking at Idlib, of course, as the final stronghold of these militants, and they're have their eyes, their mindset on the fact that, well, once we rid the militants of this area, then the war will be over. But of course, we have other players involved that seem to not want this war to be over anytime soon.
Right, and interesting that Damascus is more and more in the news, and we know that Yusra Hawkins has been speaking about Damascus, showing that the prophecies explained that this city is going to become a ruinous heap. A very interesting message that he had a couple weeks ago. So the wars that are now focused in that area, it seems that we're going to see that play out, and we're going to see that city destroyed.
Yeah, and you can't forget what he's mentioned for many, many years. And even I believe it's in the Mark of the Beast and the book that he wrote in the 70s, Mark of the Beast, and the Birth of the Nuclear Baby book, that all of this stems in that area in and around the great river Euphrates. So it hasn't moved out of that area, and everything is even focused with the international community in dealing with that area. So the troops right now are waiting for their orders to fight, but there are actually orders of peace going out right now for all of you who desire to learn about peace and actually be a part of the movement that will bring a peaceful solution to stop all wars. You can find out more by contacting the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copies of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, Yahweh'sBranch.com. We would also like you to visit our website at YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can email them at info@Yahweh.com. Any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen now. And once again, don't forget to go to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com for 2 excellent and absolutely free Bible study helps on the market there. Guaranteed. You can type in, you can put the word or phrase in the search bar and enter and see many results come up. Guaranteed to enlighten you with whatever topic you're looking for in the Scripture. So check out those 2 programs, absolutely free. Yisrael Says program and Ask Yisrael program.
Well, don't go anywhere, because up next is Yisrael Hawkins bringing Bible prophecies and showing how the events that are unfolding today were actually foretold thousands of years ago. Well, for all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Hammerman.
Thank you for watching.